Grab your coffee, mama. It's time for coffee, clients, and nap time. I'm Sarah Marie, and this is your guide to building a business that works for you and your family. Here, we'll dive into creating a thriving business that lets you be the hands-on parent you want while designing the life you've always dreamed of. So if you're ready to balance business success with family life and make it all work in a way that feels right for you, then let's dive in. Hey mamas, and welcome back to Coffee, Clients, and Nap Time. In today's Naptime Chat, I'm speaking with Sophie Anderson, a burnout prevention coach who helps women make small, sustainable changes that actually work in their real lives. Sophie didn't set out to start a business, but after experiencing the impact of coaching firsthand, she found herself building one alongside full-time work and motherhood, and quickly came face to face with the very thing she now helps others avoid: burnout. In this conversation, we talk about the early signs so many of us miss, how burnout actually builds over time, and what it really looks like to create boundaries and support systems when you're the one holding it all together. So if you've ever felt like you're juggling too much, running on empty, or trying to do all the right things but still feeling stretched, this one's for you. Thanks so much for joining me, Sophie. I am so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you for having me. I am too.
I'm really keen to hear the start of your journey. How did you start in business? How did that combine with motherhood, and what that looked like for you?
I started my business in 2022, at the start of 2022, by default, because I studied coaching after I got a coach myself, and she completely changed my life. So I went and studied coaching because I wanted to do it and to help other people as well in the same way that she helped me. Though I thought I would be able to just get employed as a coach, I never really wanted or dreamt of having my own business. So that's how I essentially started a business, winging it. And that was when my daughter was 6 at the time, and I was still working full time for the university here. So this is how my journey started.
I love that you never meant to start a business. It was like, I want to do this thing and I'll be employed. And then you realize that, well, actually, it's probably a different journey for what that looks like for you. What does your business look like now then? If that's where you started, what is it looking like in the current day?
Well, now I work full time in my business. So very big, drastic change. Over time, over the first 3 years, I started dropping days at the university. I started working part-time instead of full-time. I dropped to 3 days a week. And then I let go completely 3 years ago now. 2 years ago. Funny, I don't remember that. I think it was in 2024 that I left the university completely. So now it looks like one-on-one coaching. I've got my own private clients. I do one-on-one coaching in the workplace. And I also do a lot of speaking for Congress and conferences and professional development days in organizations, online and here in Cairns.
It sounds like it's been quite a growth journey for you then, moving from starting your business while working full-time. And a lot of mums do start their businesses on either on the side of a full-time job or a part-time job, or on the side of parenthood itself, which can be a full-time job. I know within your work you do a lot of burnout prevention. How did that show up for you when you were actually trying to juggle full-time work, starting your business and having these competing, and being a parent, you had a 6-year-old, how are these competing things wanting your time and energy and attention?
Well, and this is the ironic thing that happened is I wanted to become a coach because I was seeing everyone burning out in the workplace, and I was seeing academics within the same school and on the same level. One would be fine and one would be burning out. So I became really interested in how can people look after themselves so they don't burn out? What's the difference between these people? And obviously I had the opportunity to do a lot of market research, which was not business orientated, but conversations came up, and I started realizing what individuals were doing to stay well, the mindset behind the things they were telling themselves. So that's what I wanted to do essentially when I became a certified coach, was to help them. And because it wasn't available, I started my own business. And then I started to see those signs of burnout in myself because, well, first, I didn't know how to run a business. So I was spending so much time in here doing so many things, but not getting any client, any traction, which is really disheartening. So I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. That was draining my energy. I felt bad when I was here in the office because I felt like I should be with my family. And when I was with my family, I felt that's when I got all the insights and I was like, oh, that's right. Oh, this is what I should be doing right now. So I never felt at peace, and it was really starting to drain me. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and feeling like I couldn't go back to sleep. My brain was on high alert, get up at 4 and start working again. And then I thought, well, let's study that. Like I caught myself straight away, and I actually never burnt out, which is quite rare for people who specialize in burnout. They often come from a journey of burning out and recovering. So I caught myself on time and I went, hang on, I've got the tools. Let's look at what's happening. And then I went back to my notes about in the workplace and started to draw parallels with how the mindset impacts us on top of the workplace, because it was all on me, right? I was my own boss. I was creating the toxic workplace. So it was all on me at that stage. So that's sort of how I became really interested in burnout and the transition between the different phases.
I would love to hear more about how, as mums in business, we can then recognize some of these early signs ourselves that we don't hit that burnout. What are the things we should be looking for in our own lives, in our own work, way that we work? These signals that kind of go, whoop, take notice, this is where you're heading.
That's such a great question. And it's so powerful because people who burn out, it did not take them by surprise. They saw it coming, but they felt like there was nothing they could do. So the main things that people will notice are things like having a lot more body tension, pain, maybe even twitches. I start getting twitches in my eye when I'm feeling a lot of stress. So I guess what's important to say in terms of burnout, if you allow me to just define it so it's really clear for people, and then I'll talk about the different signs. Burnout is essentially a clinical condition that can be diagnosed by psychiatrists with a test. It's called the Maslach Burnout Inventory. The word burnout is overused, which I don't mind, though it's really helpful to know that we're not actually burnt out until we are. And that stage of burnout is when we're completely ineffective, completely exhausted. Often we can't get up. It resembles a lot of depression. And so physically, mentally, emotionally, completely drained. And also a lot of cynicism about the workplace or our business. Essentially, we just want to sell it and get rid of it. We want to get a job. But it gets to the stage when we're actually burnt out, it's a diagnostic. What creates burnout, the journey to burnout, is when there's an imbalance between the demands, all the things we have to do, and the resources. So all the energy, the time, the support, the money, all the stuff that can help us achieve those demands, the pressure that we have on ourselves. So the first thing is, for some people, is to stop and realize what are all those demands, and to notice one of the signs can be, I actually am one human and look at this list of that, and it can be a physical to-do list. There's too much. That's the first sign. There's literally too much for one human there. I would never give that to my employee, for example, if I had an employee. But the real signs that we will notice in our bodies and our minds are things like body tension, so chronic headaches. Often it can be things like brain fog, so losing focus, being unable to finish sentences, for example, and finding it really hard to have clarity on an idea. Things like being more reactive and snappy. Perhaps when we get interrupted, we're really impatient with people interrupting us. We're like, I'm already busy enough. Can't you see? Can't you tell? It can be things like wanting to isolate ourselves, like we've got literally nothing left in the tank for other people on the weekend, or we don't answer our phone. Even a friend calling us is like, oh my gosh, this is going to take too much of my energy. And really realizing that this is not like we used to be. That's the main sign. You will see those things when you're drifting towards burnout, those signs.
I find that really relevant because I had very limited sleep last night, and I can see a lot of those symptoms that you just mentioned in me this morning on very little sleep. So I can draw the parallels there between burnout, making those things happen, and, mums that are chronically tired and, not sleeping well for whatever reason. I suppose my next question then is, how can mums begin to take care of themselves when they start to see these signals, I guess, these signals that are letting them know that that's where they're heading towards? Are there any practical things that we can do to kind of go, okay, I recognize where I'm heading. I don't want to end up there. Here's the things I'm going to do to stop that process.
100%. There are so many things. I will make it simple. So I'm talking about the demands and the resources. The demands are the workload. There's a lot of things we don't control. If we're single parenting or if we're the main carer, we have to cook meals, we have to buy the food, we have to take the kids to school. There's a lot of things we don't control in terms of demands. So there's a lot of demands that we put on ourselves. If we have really high standards, if we're perfectionists, if we want to do more than what we can, those can be internal demands and things that we're creating for ourselves that are making it harder. If we think I should be further along, I like all those I should exercise and eat healthily and stay in touch with all my friends. I see someone who relates here sometimes. Was your expression. And I relate as well. Full transparency. I am at risk of burnout, just like so many people. So the things to realize and the thing I do with myself is when I physically feel that either the brain fog or I feel like the tension, I've got a headache, I ask myself, what are the things that I need to do? What are the demands? Obviously, that's not how I talk to myself, but what are the demands that I have? It's all those things that I need to do. And there's all those things I think I need to do. So that's number one. Number two is if we have too many demands and not enough resources, we want to increase the resources. And that can be time, energy, support, money. That's what's going to help us chew through that endless to-do list, essentially. So some of the resources can be things like our energy. And I have an exercise that's called the energy inventory. I can drop it as a free resource for your listeners if you'd like that. But essentially realizing what drains our energy on a daily basis, again, external and internal, but what gives us energy? We know it. Sometimes it's just a specific song. It can be just a quick walk, even around the house. Maybe we have like a walking pad or a treadmill, or we have a sit-stand desk. And we know those things give us energy. We know that one friend that we call and she always cheers us up. So looking at energy management like that. In terms of getting more support, asking for help and also accepting help, right? People will say, I can look after the child. I can come. And we're like, oh no, I don't want to put that on you. Just say yes. People love helping. You're actually doing them a service. So I can keep going on, but these are the two main things. You want to drop the demands and you want to increase the resources. Those two, the imbalance creates stress. So the other thing is to go into stress prevention and stress management. Stress prevention are things like taking breaks, taking big breaths, going outside more often. It can be things like just relaxing our body throughout the day, dropping the tension. And that means when the stressor hits, when that client emails us, or when the toddler comes in the office and we're in the middle of something really important, or when it's time to go get the kids at school and we are in the middle of an important task, things like that, interruptions, we respond more than we react. That's what the role of stress prevention. And stress management is having those tools that we know what to do once the thing has happened, once the stress has hit us. Again, things like deep breathing, going in nature, calling the friend. It can be things like even movement, like dancing to a song we like. It can be things like patting a dog, patting your pet if you can. It can be having that comforting cup of tea. So these are the 4 things: reducing the demands, increasing the resources, preventing stress, and managing stress.
It sounds so simple when you speak it out. I know a lot of women struggle to put that into action, I think is the best way to say. Although I will say, when you said that it's a gift to accept someone's help, one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given, and I was a single mum for a very long time with my older 2 children, was people wouldn't offer to help if they didn't want to help. So saying, like, they're not going to offer to help if it's going to be an inconvenience to them. People are not going to offer to help if they don't want to. So that really switched my view and understanding of like saying yes when people say, "Oh, let me help you do that." And usually I'll be like, no, that's fine. Like, I'll do it. It's fine. And then it really switched that around for me. So I think that's a really important thought to leave the listeners with as well, in that if people are offering to help, say yes. It is a gift for them. But back to my previous thought before I went off on that tangent. When people are unable to do it as simply as you just said, so, making sure your resources are higher than the things that are needed of you and reducing stress and managing stress, what are some small changes then that people can make to kind of make that a little bit easier within their world? They're busy, they've got lots going on. It feels like another thing to have to be thinking about in the mental load, almost like, oh, where am I going to find more resources? How am I going to reduce my stress? So what are your tips and advice around that?
There's a lot to say about the standards that we put on ourselves that are often inherited from either society or a family. So it can be really helpful to reframe perfectionism, or we don't like to say that we're perfectionists, or not all of us like to say that we're perfectionists. When I discovered that was my coach who told me, and I was like, no, maybe a little bit. And but what it really does, whether it's the word perfectionist or not, when we have really high standards, is it's never good enough, and we're always raising the bar. We always want to do more. We always want to be more. So practically what that means is just to catch ourselves when we feel activated, and we can just talk to ourselves and be like, am I aiming too high for now? It doesn't mean that we're starting to botch what we're doing, but what would be excellent? Sometimes when we think about onboarding clients, that's a very fragile part of owning a small business. When we're onboarding a client, we want to create a really good experience for them. We want them to stay. And we have really, really high standards, and we can overthink it. And I know at the start, I used to spend sometimes a full day just tweaking the agreement, tweaking the email, and just making it fabulous. I can't even imagine if I was to use AI now, like the rabbit hole I would go through for my onboarding experience. And it could be things like, what did I promise? What are the parameters that they signed up to? And how can I reflect that in my onboarding service? So essentially, that's just one example. But in really going back to how can I make this excellent? And excellent is great, not aiming for what else can I do and what else can I add, and always wanting to strive for more. So recognizing that's really helpful. Another thing that people can do is reducing how much of other people's energy enter their lives. Things like watching the news often. The way that we consume the news can be changed if we feel like we want to stay up to date with what's happening in the world. There are apps and videos and all sorts of original and creative ways to stay on top of things without the proper media and negativity overwhelm. That can be really good for our energy, but also not allowing ourselves to like grab our phone and go on social media the first 30 minutes or hour of our day is also something that is just so regenerating. And in the evening, same thing. We feel like we're winding down because it's a mindless thing, but in fact, our mind is highly activated, full of dopamine and adrenaline when we're scrolling on social media and capturing everyone's energy. And if we have high standards on top of that, it'll give us a lot of like, oh, I should be doing this. Oh, look at how beautiful her reel is. My reels will never be that beautiful. And then we put more demands on ourselves, especially higher expectations. And the last practical tip that I love to give is write down your to-do. Write down the things that you feel you have to do. And on every second basis of your day, just have the next thing there. So if you get interrupted, you can come back and you know exactly what your next thing is. It can be in a Trello board, it can be a Asana, it can be fancy, or it can just be on paper. And this one thing that's there, you know it's high impact, you know it's important to do. So that reduces the mental load as well to know exactly what you need to do next.
I love that advice of protecting the time in the morning when you get out of bed for that half hour or hour. And in the evening as well. One of the best boundaries I put in place within my own business was setting my nighttime mode on my phone. So I'm a type 1 diabetic and all my devices go through my phone onto my watch. I constantly feel like I'm on because it's constantly talking to me. And then the downside of that is all my emails come through, all my business emails and everything like that. So one of the best boundaries I put in place was to set it into nighttime mode at a set time at night, and it doesn't come out of it until a set time in the morning. I would love to hear more about how women can set boundaries themselves, similar to that, I guess, in their businesses, in their life, and how they can do it without feeling like they're always going to disappoint someone when they do.
That's such an important question, because the first thing with boundaries is that makes them hard, because people say it's hard. The first thing that makes it hard is our perception of them. And a boundary, if you think about it, a physical boundary or the definition of boundary, it's a fence, essentially. It's a separation between two things. So when we talk about human boundaries, we think about a separation between ourselves and the other person. And often there's a misconception that all boundaries need to be communicated. And that can be so stressful to think, how am I going to communicate my boundaries to people? So I want to give some really practical first boundaries. If someone's like, I don't do boundaries, I just can't, it's too awkward, it's too hard. What I love to help my clients with is to start with boundaries with themselves. You start by setting boundaries with yourself. So, for example, bedtime, like your app that you turn off and you don't look at emails and things like that. Things like working hours, lunchtime. You set those boundaries with yourself and you get really good and really proud of yourself. One of the most powerful boundary I have in my business is Monday is my day. It's a client-free day. There's no podcast recording. There's no meetings. Even if a CEO was to request a meeting with me on a Monday, I would say no. Because Monday is, well, for two reasons. I smash so much work on Monday. I'm so creative. I do all the background work as well, bookkeeping and all those kind of things, client work. But the second thing is it means on Saturday and Sunday, which I don't work weekends, I don't have to plan for Monday. If I had client meetings on the Monday, that means I would probably work on Sunday to get ready for those meetings and those appointments. So that's a very powerful boundary. People can start small. And sometimes boundaries feel restrictive, feels like we're mothering ourselves, like, oh, go to bed, it's late enough. So the way to set boundaries with ourselves is to remind ourselves of why. Why am I doing this? What's the bigger picture? If you are feeling yourself burning out and it's part of your language or part of your thoughts and your fears, you're like, whoa, I'm exhausted. It can be just that. I'm exhausted. I need to do this. I want to feel like myself again. And you can keep going deeper if you're selfless, like I'm sure most of your audience are just such caring, giving humans. Well, what's the trickle effect of that? And you were talking about this on one of your podcasts. When I set boundaries with myself, I have more energy. I'm more positive. I'm more patient. I'm nicer to my kids. I'm nicer to my partner. I listen better. So to think about all of this and say, and this is why I'm going to go to bed at whatever time you're deciding to go to bed now. And things like if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're used to having racing thoughts, same thing. And I keep putting, people can't see me, but I keep putting my hands on my heart because it really helps me to remember that I'm also a human and I also have needs, and to talk to myself in a nicer way. And I'll take a big breath and I'll be like, you really want to solve this problem tonight. You feel like you really need to get to the bottom of this idea, but you're going to be really tired tomorrow and you're probably going to forget all the brilliant ideas you've had in the middle of the night. So just let go for now. So if people can start to set boundaries in that human way, in that kind way with themselves, I really want that chocolate chip cookie or that fourth coffee. I just really want, I feel like I've got nothing left. I need it, but I won't sleep tonight or I will regret after. So I'm going to have a toast instead or whatever, the herbal tea or cacao, right? It's just to be on our own side, more to be more gentle with ourselves instead of saying, oh, I guess I have to go to bed. I said I would, and to make it difficult. So this is the first step. Set boundaries with yourself, get really good at them. And then the second step is not necessarily how can I communicate those boundaries, but how can I set myself up for success so that people respect those boundaries. So for example, if I want to not take phone calls after 6 p.m., not client calls, not work calls or emails, because this is family time. This is when I regenerate. This is when I feel proud of myself and happy and with my family. The boundary with myself will be, I turn my laptop off. I turn my notifications off. I put my phone away. Those kind of things. I just don't want to see those notifications. Now, obviously, you don't want clients who are used to calling you and you answer to call you and all of a sudden you don't answer, if that's part of your reality. So you want to let them know, maybe it's in the original agreement, maybe it's in you have an out of office reply to your emails and things like that. So you protect yourself with systems. And equally at home, you can tell your partner, if you have a partner, or your children, if they're big enough, to say, don't let mommy grab her phone, or, just make sure that you stop me if you see me doing this. You can, and be cheeky with it. Again, it's not like you want them to boss you around, turn the role around, but you can help them to keep you accountable. And then with yourself, to respect those boundaries as well. It's something I call impulse control. And this is something I practice every day. And it's, say I want to grab my phone or to come back to my laptop, but I've promised myself I wouldn't because I want to look after myself. I need to rest. I want to read a book. I want to spend time with my family. Even halfway to the office, as I'm coming to the office to reopen my laptop, I will stop myself. That's impulse control. And I go, oh, wow, that was a close one. Okay, I'm not doing this. I remind myself why, and I turn around and I don't do it.
I think that's a really beautiful segue into your theory. I'm going to call it a theory. You can correct me, of stick to the plan, not the mood. So obviously impulse control, as you just mentioned, would play into this quite a lot. Can you talk to me about what that means in practice for you?
Absolutely. Stick to the plan, not to the mood is good for two things. First, if we want to change something, we need a plan. It can be written, it can be in our mind. I do recommend writing it down, and you want to chunk it down into small steps. So typically, as high achieving women, we want to get healthier, and we'll go, I'm going to start training 5 days a week and packing my lunch and going to bed early. And we just put so much pressure on ourselves to do all of the things at once. And if that's all the things you want to do, put them in a plan and then chunk down your plan. How are you going to do all of this? And by all means, you can experiment with trying to do all of those things at once. I always recommend starting very small. And we can talk about this after. Though having a plan with your first 3 steps is what I always recommend. I want to get back into walking in the morning. If that's the reality of some of your people who have a partner who can look after their children and they can go out in the morning. I have a lot of clients who recognize that exercise or movement even is their first step to feeling better and to managing their energy and their stress better. I just want to get back into exercise. I remember when I was exercising, I felt so much better. And once I've exercised, I have a healthier breakfast. I'm happier. I have more energy. I'm more creative. And that's all scientifically backed as well. So I want to get back into exercise. If you just tell yourself that, it's going to be scattered and really hard if you don't have a specific goal. And this is where, the coaching side of things is what, when, where, how. So you start detailing what's your plan with getting back into fitness. And I do recommend to start small so you can be really proud of yourself and not beat up on yourself because you didn't achieve your goal. Once you have your plan, the thing is, if your plan is to start getting up at 6 instead of 7, that's a big gap, which is doable. But when you wake up at 6 and your mind says, I am not getting up. I am too comfy. I'm too tired. I didn't have a good night's sleep. I want to remind you again, and it's not stick to the plan. It's, all right, I had a plan. I'm going to give this a shot. So I stick to the plan because I made time to write that plan down, right? Your mood, just like motivation, will not last. It will not support you all the time. And we know this from, setting goals about even content creation. On every Monday, I'm going to do my content for the week. And then also we're cyclic beings, women, like it's not going to happen every morning, every Monday. Or if it does, I want to talk to you. I want to know more. So we need to be on our own side and have a realistic plan. But once we've drafted the plan, at least give it a shot, stick to the plan, and then you can readjust it. If you always follow your mood, it's very likely that your plan is not going to get achieved.
On the other side of that, then, how can we build systems that help us stay consistent even when the mood and maybe the self-sabotage wants to come in and derail us from the plan?
That's such a good question because consistency is the holy grail. It's like what everyone wants. I want to be really consistent with everything. Consistency is built around things that motivate us, that are really attractive, that are rewarding, that are easy as well. And that links into habit building. So for people who've read James Clear, Atomic Habits, that'll resonate with you. Essentially, if you want to be consistent with something new that you implement, you really want to make it obvious, which means we'll just take the example of exercising. You want to have, say, your clothes out and ready to go. You want to have an alarm in your phone as well that tells you to go, and that can be for anything. You want to make it attractive. If having a nice outfit makes it attractive for you, go for it. For me, I live in the tropics, so I bought a walking pad because for me, walking outside here after 9 a.m. is not attractive. And also, I don't feel safe at night walking. Like, I have so many excuses not to go for a walk. I don't anymore because I have a walking pad, which is meant to slide under the desk and you can keep working and typing, but I can't do that. It's really hard to type when you're walking. The other thing you want to do is you want to make it easy. And that's where starting small is so important. If you want to start walking, start with 5 minutes. You'll be so proud of yourself. And chances are you'll come back and you'll be like, that was not long enough. I want more. And then you can go for more. It's much better than coming back being like, my knee is really sore. And the last thing is to make it satisfying. So that means in terms of exercise, often we feel better physically, but also things like remembering why you're doing it. And you're so like what I was saying, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be so proud of myself. So when you want to be consistent with something, you want to, the more you can, make it satisfying. So some things, we're talking about mostly mental health here and overall well-being and avoiding burnout. So those kind of practices we want to be consistent with will be different from person to person, but it can be things like consistent way to write your to-do list. If you always have a way to write your to-do list, it's really easy. It's a system that you like. I started with something laminated, and then it was all dirty, and then I bought a really nice board on my wall. Still didn't work. Then I had a journal, didn't work. Now I'm in Trello. That works well for me. So find your way to organize all your demands into a system that works, and managing obviously your calendar well.
I would love to hear more about how you found doing these things yourself when you were working, starting your business, and also parenting without supports around you. What was that like for you? How did you move through that? And what was that experience like?
The real answer to this is that was when I was feeling myself burning out. I did not know about consistency. I did not know about boundaries. I found it very challenging. I was sitting at my computer. If I had a few hours in the evening, if I put my daughter to bed and I had a little bit of energy after working full time, and I would just sit there and I wouldn't know where to start. I didn't really have a plan. I found it really scary to have goals because I was so worried I wouldn't achieve them as well. So all the things I'm talking about are not things I used to implement. I had to develop them. I was highly inconsistent with everything business related, but I was so good in my personal life. I was so good at meditating, getting up early. I quit drinking cold turkey, never looked back. That was 6 years ago. Consistency, I have this so drilled into me. It's easy for me in my personal life. And in the business, I just could not be consistent, have goals. So I was really disappointed in myself. And I think it took me to join a membership, like a business coaching membership, to start understanding that, well, first, I wasn't the only one who struggled to do all this on her own, and learning business skills and managing personal life as well, but also to find the first resources. How do we set goals in business? How do we do this? What truly moves the needle? So in terms of personal life, I realized everything I was doing well and how, and the science behind it. And then I started to apply it to the way I was running my business as well.
I think that's so relatable to so many women. When they're in the midst of it, you don't know you're in the midst of it. And you've just spoken about how you've come through that. You learned these ways of living and these ways of running your business that would have supported you so beautifully when you were in that journey and you were heading towards burnout and you were doing it alone. And I think with hindsight is so beautiful in that sense that we can look back and say, gosh, that would have helped me so much in that moment. Now I want to help others in that moment before they reach that point, because I've now got the tools available to me to help others. What advice would you then give a mum who feels like they are carrying everything alone and they're looking to build alternative support methods, like a support systems around them, their family and their businesses?
The first advice I would say is validate how you feel. Don't tell yourself you're overreacting. You should be grateful. I recently learnt the term gaslighting in terms of people gaslighting others on social media. And I realized how much of this we do to ourselves sometimes. So just validating how we feel is such an important step. And then be compassionate to yourself and being like, this is how I feel. This is hard for me right now. I'm human and I'm looking for solutions. In terms of support systems, I know in rural and regional areas, it's not always easy to meet in person and to find the help that we need. And isolation is a big driver of mental illness even here in Australia, where we're super connected. And then there's a lot of people here as well. So it's important to, if there's no support network in person, to then look online. Joining a mother's group saved myself when Billy was really little. My daughter, I had postnatal depression, and I thought I was the only one having those problems. And then I joined a mother's group, and other mums also had milk issues and had dropped their baby in the shower and had no family supporting them. All of a sudden, it was all destigmatized. And so that would be one of the first thing I would say: destigmatize it with yourself. Look, I'm really feeling like that, and it's hard. And then to join a support group, whether it's online or in person.
On that note, if any of my listeners would love to connect with you, find out more about you, or even just be connected if they've aligned with what you've been talking to us about, do you want to drop your socials or your website or anything like that on ways people can reach out to you?
Sure. Yes, they can connect with me, and there's never any pressure to work with me. But if anything resonated that they want more information on, I have hundreds of tools that I've developed as well. I'm more than happy to send them self-assessments and self-coaching, and we can just have a conversation. They can explore my website, sophieanderson.au. There's a lot of blogs and self-coaching journeys on there as well. And my social handle is Sophie Anderson Coach, all in one word.
I will drop all those into the show notes for anyone who is keen to connect with Sophie. Thank you so much for your time with me today. I love to end out every one of these Naptime chats with the question, what would be the one piece of advice you would give a mum just starting out in business?
I would say make sure when you notice that you're stressed or activated or you're feeling the pressure, don't wait. Just apply any small way to reduce stress. It can be just turning away from your computer and taking 3 big breaths. It can be just tapping on the tip of your fingers. Alternatively, that'll reduce the stress. Or it can be, if possible, to just step outside and put your feet on the grass. Those small moments where you reduce stress in your body, it means it doesn't accumulate and lead to bigger issues.
As my Gen Z kids say, go touch grass. So what a wonderful thought to finish up our call on. Thank you once again, Sophie, for such an enlightening chat. I am so excited for my listeners to listen and to get so much value out of what we've spoken about today. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for joining me on Coffee, Clients and Naptime. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another mum who's ready to build their dream life. You can also join our Facebook page or Instagram to stay connected every day of the week. The link is in the show notes. Just remember, you've got this, and I'm here to help every step of the way.